In the quiet town of Ashburn, Virginia, a young woman named Bethany Ann Decker had been making her way through life with determination and joy. Her mother, Kim, often reflected that Bethany had been smiling since the day she was born, describing her daughter as simply a joy to be around, always upbeat and positive. To her younger siblings, Bethany was the encouraging leader of their small pack, the one who guided and supported them through childhood challenges. After excelling throughout her school years, Bethany was accepted into George Mason University, where she pursued a degree in global and economic change. Her academic abilities were remarkable, with one roommate noting that Bethany could postpone writing an essay until the night before, complete it in just an hour, and still receive an exceptional grade. She was, by all accounts, a naturally intelligent young woman. It was during her freshman year that Bethany's path intersected with that of Emil Decker, a cadet in the Reserve Officers Training Corps who was preparing to join the Army National Guard. Those who knew Emil described him as a hopeless romantic, someone who would remember the smallest details Bethany mentioned and thoughtfully act upon them later. Bethany's family welcomed Emil warmly into their lives, feeling as though he had always been part of their circle. After dating for a couple of years, Emil proposed to Bethany. Shortly after their engagement, the couple discovered that Bethany was pregnant. Though perhaps sooner than they had planned, they embraced the news with excitement, eager to begin their life together as a family. They named their baby boy Kai and settled into their new roles as parents. The transition into parenthood, however, brought with it the expected challenges. Financial strain became a reality as Emil continued his training with the Army National Guard, while Bethany balanced her studies at George Mason with a part-time position at a restaurant. The knowledge that Emil would soon be deployed to Afghanistan added another layer of stress to their situation. With assistance from both their families, Bethany and Emil managed to maintain some stability. Yet Bethany increasingly felt they were living separate lives, drifting into different worlds. She expressed concerns to Emil that perhaps they had moved too quickly without adequate planning. Some accounts suggest that at this point, the couple decided to try a temporary separation. Though disappointed, Emil wanted to respect Bethany's needs and agreed to the arrangement. As Emil prepared for his deployment overseas, Bethany relocated to an apartment closer to her workplace, allowing her to take on additional shifts. It was at the restaurant where she worked that Bethany would meet Ronald Roldan, a 31-year-old originally from Bolivia. A relationship developed between them, with Bethany later telling friends that she had been feeling isolated and lonely with Emil away for extended periods. Despite reservations expressed by her friends, Ronald soon moved into Bethany's apartment. Her best friend Sarah was particularly surprised by this development and cautioned Bethany against it. However, Sarah also recognized that Bethany would ultimately make her own decisions and wanted to support her happiness. Though Bethany and Emil remained separated with diminishing communication between them, Emil sensed that something had changed in her life. From its beginning, Bethany's relationship with Ronald showed troubling signs. Those around her noticed his controlling, jealous, and sometimes violent behavior. Bethany's mother, Kim, shared her concerns, having heard disturbing accounts of what was occurring in the apartment. She even suspected that Ronald might have harmed Kai after noticing the child had a black eye on one occasion. The explanation given was that Kai had fallen backward from a chair while being watched by a friend. But Bethany's family harbored doubts about this account. They also discovered that Ronald had contacted Kai's daycare center pretending to be Emil. Fortunately, the staff recognized something was amiss and took precautions, establishing a code system for phone communications to prevent Ronald from gaining access to the child. Ronald's controlling behavior extended to constant texting and calling demanding proof of Bethany's whereabouts and companions. He would even follow her to verify her location, then wait outside until she left. Bethany found herself in an increasingly difficult situation and eventually confided in Emil about everything, acknowledging that she had made a mistake. Despite the circumstances, Emil expressed a desire to work on their relationship, emphasizing that his family remained his priority. He had sensed that something had been wrong for some time, noting that Bethany had been working nearly 6 days each week, barely communicating with him and seeming distant when she did. To address these issues, Bethany and Emil decided to take a holiday together during his leave, hoping to repair their fragile marriage. As 2010 came to a close, Emil sent a warm message to his family. "Hi, I'm Specialist Decker, and I'm stationed at Morales Frazier, and I just want to give a lovely shout out to my wife, who lives in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and to my son Kai. I love you, and I miss you very much. Have a Merry Christmas." In mid-January 2011, Emil received his leave, and the couple maintained their plans for a holiday in Hawaii. When Bethany met Emil at the airport, another complication became apparent. She was pregnant again, and Ronald was the father. Emil later said that he wasn't angry and still wanted their holiday to proceed. He reflected, "I'd been overseas, and it was a completely different world. Coming back to the United States, I was just happy to be home, to be alive, to be with my family, that anything else in the whole entire world really did not matter to me at all." The trip to Hawaii represented a crucial moment for their relationship, and by all accounts, they enjoyed their time together. They spent more time talking, laughing, and reconnecting than they had in months, creating hope that their relationship might find its way back to solid ground. When Emil and Bethany returned from Hawaii on January 28th, Bethany visited her grandmother. They spent a pleasant afternoon making pizza and discussing the trip, though her grandmother sensed there were aspects of Bethany's life that remained unshared. She could see that Bethany, young and overwhelmed by complex circumstances, was struggling with the weight of it all. Later, Bethany confided that she felt consumed by stress, guilt, and sadness, experiencing the lowest emotional point of her life. That evening, Emil joined them for dinner, where difficult conversations about their future continued. Unexpectedly, Bethany's phone began to ring. She quickly gathered her belongings and rushed out, saying they didn't understand what might happen to her if she didn't return home. Emil was scheduled to fly back to his deployment on February 2nd, and while their holiday had been restorative, uncertainty remained about how things would proceed after his departure. The plan was for Bethany to meet him at the airport for a farewell, assuring him, "I will always be there no matter what." On February 2nd, Emil arrived at the airport, anticipating Bethany's presence, but she never appeared. He contacted her workplace and learned that she hadn't reported for any of her shifts in the previous days. Before boarding his flight, Emil reached out to Bethany's family members to alert them that something seemed amiss. Throughout the days that followed, friends and family attempted to contact Bethany without success. Kim, Bethany's mother, received several unusual phone calls that have not been publicly detailed. Bethany's friend Sarah noticed activity on Bethany's Facebook account and initiated a conversation through Messenger. Sarah immediately recognized that someone other than Bethany was responding. The English was incorrect, words were misspelled, and basic questions went unanswered. Sarah shared her suspicions with Kim. Emil also received an email from Bethany's account that he believed had not been written by his wife. By this point, Kim had heard from 4 different individuals who all suspected that Bethany's Facebook account had been compromised. Bethany's grandparents, who lived closer to her than Kim did, drove to her apartment complex to check on her. They found her car parked outside at an unusual angle with a flat tire. Notably, no one had observed the vehicle in that location prior to this discovery. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, they called emergency services on February 19th and reported Bethany missing. Family members explained to authorities that while Bethany occasionally went several days without communication, 3 weeks of silence was highly unusual. Given her absence and pregnancy, law enforcement moved quickly, concerned about the time that had already elapsed. A review of Bethany's financial records revealed that her phone credit cards and debit cards had not been used since January 29th. She had missed her university classes, hadn't sought medical care at any local hospitals, hadn't appeared at work, and her passport remained at home, indicating she hadn't left the country. When police examined her apartment, they found no signs of forced entry or struggle, and nothing appeared obviously disturbed. Her personal belongings remained in place, suggesting she hadn't packed for a departure. Similarly, her car contained no evidence of foul play or clues to her whereabouts. By early March, detectives organized a press conference. Search efforts expanded to include divers examining nearby waters, canine units searching fields, and FBI involvement. While tips came in, none led to meaningful progress in locating Bethany. Based on the timeline established, it appeared that Emil had been the second to last person to see Bethany. He received permission to return home and assist with the investigation, voluntarily taking a polygraph test and cooperating fully with extensive questioning. Emil maintained that he had no involvement in Bethany's disappearance and expressed deep concern despite their relationship difficulties. Emil understood why investigators needed to examine him closely, given his departure from the country around the time Bethany went missing and the news of her pregnancy with another man's child. He cooperated fully with all inquiries, no matter how difficult, to eliminate himself as a suspect and focus on helping find Bethany. His movements between January 28th and February 2nd were all accounted for. Law enforcement considered whether Bethany might have chosen to take a break from her life given her stressful circumstances. However, going so long without contacting her mother-grandmother or seeing her son Kai was entirely inconsistent with her character. Police continued to classify her disappearance as a missing persons case rather than presuming something more sinister had occurred. They refrained from identifying suspects, stating it would be premature and wanting to encourage public vigilance without suggesting specific theories. Investigators still needed to speak with Ronald Roldan, who was no longer living in Bethany's apartment and was located at his parents' home. Ronald stated that the relationship had ended and he had moved out recently. His account clarified that he, not Emil, had been the last person to see Bethany. While Emil had last seen her on January 28th, Ronald claimed to have seen her on the afternoon of January 29th, describing her as seeming normal. The restaurant manager partially corroborated this timeline. confirming that Bethany had called just after 2 p.m. on January 29th to confirm her shifts for the coming week, including one scheduled for that evening, though she never arrived to work it. Ronald explained that he hadn't reported Bethany's disappearance because after their relationship ended, they naturally had no further communication, so he wasn't aware she was missing. Financial records showed that Ronald had left Bethany's apartment on the afternoon she was last seen making a withdrawal from his bank account at 4:26 p.m. He had sent two messages to Bethany at 4:01 p.m. and 4:31 p.m. informing her that he would be staying with his children at their apartment. However, investigators confirmed that after Bethany contacted her workplace at 2:08 p.m., her phone showed no further activity, raising questions about whether she ever received these messages. Danielle, Ronald's ex-girlfriend and the mother of his two children, stated that she had dropped the children with him around 4:30 p.m. Ronald told her he wasn't certain if Bethany would return, as they had argued earlier and she had left. When Danielle came back a few days later, Ronald said he hadn't seen or heard from Bethany since that day. Investigators obtained a search warrant for Ronald's apartment, but found nothing significant. They also examined his computer phone and hard drives without discovering evidence linking him to Bethany's disappearance. A background check revealed that Ronald had previous interactions with law enforcement, but at this stage, there was nothing connecting him to Bethany's case. Given that he was the last known person to have seen her, he was classified as a person of interest, though not a suspect. Bethany's story gained national media attention, particularly after details emerged about her marriage to Emil and pregnancy with Ronald's child. In May 2011, when Bethany would have been due to give birth, detectives issued another press release and contacted hospitals to determine if she had sought medical care anywhere. Again, no information emerged. As months became years, the investigation showed little progress. In May 2012, a new detective was assigned to the case, offering fresh perspective. That year, what would have been Bethany's 23rd birthday coincided with Mother's Day, and family and friends gathered to raise awareness and share memories. Emil and Kai attended this event as well. Kim connected with the Harrington family, who had lost their daughter Morgan in 2009, finding common ground in their shared experiences of uncertainty and loss. In late 2012, Investigation Discovery aired an episode about Bethany's case on their program Disappeared, generating renewed attention but yielding no answers. As time passed, tips and leads diminished and other investigations necessarily took priority. Emil eventually filed for divorce from Bethany and received sole custody of their son Kai. Everything remained relatively quiet until November 2014, when an unrelated emergency call would cast new light on Bethany's case. On November 12, 2014, police in North Carolina responded to a serious domestic incident at approximately 2 a.m. A woman named Vicky reported having shot her boyfriend twice in self-defense after he attacked her. She stated that he had approached her from behind, grabbed her by the hair, and broken her neck in two places before punching and biting her. Despite her injuries, Vicky managed to retrieve her gun and shoot him twice. He then took the weapon from her and shot her 3 times, including once in the head. She still managed to crawl to a neighbor's house where the neighbor secured the doors, took his own gun for protection, and called emergency services. Vicky's boyfriend was Ronald Roldan. He was arrested and charged with attempted murder, though this charge was later reduced as part of a plea agreement, much to Vicky's frustration. He received a minimum 6-year sentence, after which he would be transferred to immigration and Customs Enforcement custody to begin deportation proceedings to Bolivia. Vicky informed authorities that Ronald had claimed he could make people disappear. A friend had contacted Vicky after seeing a television program about Bethany's case that identified Ronald as a person of interest. When Vicky confronted him about this, she said his reaction frightened her deeply. She became aware that something was wrong, but now Ronald knew that she had knowledge about Bethany, and she reported that the violence in their relationship had escalated from that point onward. Vicky expressed her belief that if Ronald were ever released from prison, he would either return to harm her or hurt someone else. His violent nature raised renewed concerns about his potential involvement in Bethany's disappearance. Vicky later shared her story on several television programs. She had lost an eye as a result of Ronald's attack, suffered a neck broken in 2 places, and faced significant financial difficulties due to her medical expenses. Nevertheless, she remained determined to share her experience and assist law enforcement in building their case. She personally reached out to Kim to share what she knew and offer support, forming a close friendship with Bethany's mother. Investigators discovered that before his relationship with Vicky, Ronald had dated a waitress named April, who had also filed charges against him. After he pushed her down a flight of stairs, spat on her, and threw her belongings outside. He had agreed to pay her $2,500, and the charges were eventually dismissed. Detectives working on Bethany's case traveled to Ronald's prison to interview him again, but he responded with verbal abuse, shouting and refusing to cooperate. His resistance only strengthened their determination to pursue the investigation. Through his attorney, Ronald maintained his innocence regarding Bethany's disappearance, stating that he hoped for her safe return and was praying for her. In March 2019, investigators announced positive developments in Bethany's case, though they did not provide specific details. They indicated that progress had been made after analyzing Bethany's Facebook account through a search warrant signed by Detective Michael Boone, who had played a significant role in solving the murders of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington. Morgan Harrington's family had formed a supportive relationship with Kim over the years, offering understanding through shared experiences. For the next year, and into 2020, information about the case remained limited, as law enforcement carefully managed the investigation without public disclosure. Then in November 2020, nearly a decade after Bethany's disappearance, a significant announcement was made. Ronald Roldan would be charged with abduction in connection with Bethany's case upon his release from prison in North Carolina. The advancement in the case had been prompted by evidence showing that both Bethany's and Ronald's individual Facebook accounts had been accessed multiple times from the same IP address during the days surrounding her disappearance. Ronald was formally charged with abduction, and within a month, the charge was elevated to second-degree murder. Prosecutors described the circumstantial evidence as substantial and expressed confidence in their case. Ronald's legal team requested bail, which the judge denied. He entered a not guilty plea, and his trial was initially scheduled for August 2021, but was postponed to February 2022, then delayed once more to January 30, 2023, when the sheriff's office released an additional 60,000 files related to the case, requiring more time for the defense to review. However, the trial did not proceed as planned. In November 2022, Ronald Roldan, then 41 years old, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. When asked to describe what had occurred, Ronald claimed that he and Bethany had argued in the apartment, and he had pushed her, causing her to fall and strike her head on the windowsill, resulting in her immediate death. He stated that, afraid to contact emergency services, he had placed her body in a large bag and disposed of it in the trash compactor at the apartment complex. He continued to deny using her Facebook account and maintained that the death had been accidental and that he had panicked. Given his history of violence and the proven falsehood of his denial regarding the Facebook account, investigators and experts questioned his characterization of the events as unintentional. In February 2023, Ronald received a 12.5-year sentence. Though he was formally sentenced to the maximum 40 years, all but 12.5 years were suspended as part of his plea agreement. He could potentially serve additional time if he commits further offenses or violates the conditions of his release. Throughout the court proceedings, Kim and Vicky sat together witnessing Ronald's sentencing. Bethany's family expressed frustration that Ronald would spend only slightly longer in prison than they had spent searching for answers about Bethany, but they also acknowledged gratitude for the resolution, however imperfect. Many lives had been affected by this case, and the wait for answers had been long and difficult. To this day, Bethany's remains have never been recovered, and law enforcement believes they are unlikely to be found. Kim has focused on keeping Bethany's memory alive and encouraging people to express their feelings to those they care about, knowing that circumstances can change unexpectedly. She continues to work with Help Save the Next Girl, a nonprofit organization founded by Morgan Harrington's parents to educate communities about safety and violence prevention. Kim reflected, "The night before Bethany was murdered, she called me and said, 'Mom, I love you.' That was the last thing she said. So I just want to encourage each and every one of you to not take for granted tomorrow, and to really make sure that you are talking to your loved ones, that you're letting people know how much you care, and not wait for the tomorrow, which may never be." The case of Bethany Ann Decker reminds us of the importance of recognizing concerning behaviors in relationships and maintaining connections with those we hold dear.